Welcome to the Right to Reason podcast. I'm your host, Robert Stanley. We are debating objective morality. Branches growing from this tree include free will, determinism, divine command theory, and the Euthyphro Dilemma. Let's do it.
It's the Right to Reason podcast.
Do I need God for morality?
Yes.
Okay, why would you say that one?
You probably don't believe in free will too, right?
Not in the way that we use it colloquially.
Anything that is moral or anything that actually happens or occurs, there is actually no accountability.
How do I rephrase it? What you're calling determinism within the sense of the free will argument, it would probably be better defined as fatalism.
You are the one determining for yourself based on your own subjectivity what is good and what is evil or what is wrong or what is best.
How did you determine God is good?
What would be the nature of the objective morality?
What do you mean
for
nature?
Whose good would it be tending to?
If all we're talking about is God said it, I believe it, that settles it, that's not morality. That's not what philosophers have been doing for hundreds of years.
So what would this objective morality be?
You see God as having a nature of that which is good. Would that be fair? Not necessarily he says it, therefore it's good. He says it because that's his nature to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So where would that nature come from?
Hi, this is Elmo from Elmo's Robert podcast, and you are listening to The Right to Reason.
This episode of the Right to Reason podcast is brought to you by our patrons and contributors like me. We have all recognized the value of the unrestrained marketplace of ideas and have decided to make a difference. You can make a difference too. Contribute at patreon.com/right and learn more about your right to reason at therighttoreason.com. Your activism is appreciated.
Today we're talking to Elmo from Elmo's World Podcast. You can find that on Spotify, or if you want to save yourself time, it's in the show notes. Elmo, how you doing?
Awesome, man. Nice to be here. I love your show, by the way. I've listened.
No way, really?
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Just, you chilling with all the guys and the awesome guests.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I like yours as well. You are a Christian, but how would you feel if we did like a rapid fire question thing where I just ask you where you are on, current event stuff, civil rights issues, Christian ideas, and that way the listener can just real quick kind of get an idea of who we're talking to today. Is that cool?
All right, go ahead.
All right. With the shortest answer possible, where are you at on, let's say, LGBTQ rights?
I guess from my presuppositions, I would say that there is just, there's a binary system into sexuality, so you're either male or female.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to gender, I would say that, of course, different people are unique in their own way, so they're human beings. They have the same rights as everyone, I would say.
But are you okay with gay marriage, for example?
Well, when it comes to the civil marriage, then I'd say that the religion has no place in the law. So they have the right to do whatever they want, outside of religion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How about the flood? Do you think the flood is a real event that occurred as it's described in the Bible, or would you say that's probably not accurate?
So I hold like an old Earth point of view, but I would say that there was at least a local flood.
Okay,
and
that's fair.
Yeah.
Jesus, is he the literal Son of God?
I guess when you say literal Son of God, yes. But of course, according to proper Christian doctrine, not Unitarian, but specifically Trinitarian.
Okay, cool. You'd be kind of more like a Protestant Christian, would that be fair?
Yeah.
Are we currently in the end times, or are the end times coming in the future, or have they already happened?
I would say that the end times will probably be in the future.
Are people literally going to float up into the sky, or is it kind of more metaphorical?
When it comes to eschatology, it's still a mystery. I don't know. I don't
That's fair.
have a literal interpretation of revelations or prophecy. So whatever comes in the future will come, but I'll still be a Christian either way.
Did creation occur the way the Bible describes it? And in the same question, do you believe in evolution?
Yeah, so I believe in theistic evolution, but when it comes to what's like, how does the Bible describe it? I guess that the Bible, I would say the Bible tells the creation story. I guess it's an allegorical thing, and
Okay.
yeah, so probably was billions of years.
When Jesus died for your sins, did he actually die and then spend like 3 days in hell or something like that, and then come back and later ascend to heaven?
No, he did not.
Okay, so break that one down for me. What actually happened when Christ was crucified?
So when Christ was crucified, I would say I would define Christ as the Lord of life, and therefore being the Lord of life, he has power over that system of being being alive or being of life and death. Therefore, out of his own authority as Lord of life, and that he went through the system, but also came out of it because of his own power as Lord of life.
Do I need God for morality?
Yes.
Okay, why would you say that one?
Yeah. So I would say that, I guess regarding the Euthyphro dilemma and all of that, I'd say that God is the ultimate basis for what is good and what is evil, and if there is no God, then everything will be permissible.
Wouldn't there still be some kind of moral truth, whether there was a God or not, in the sense of if I give you a glass of battery acid as opposed to giving you a glass of orange juice, one of those acts is good and one is bad, at least good or bad for you, and therefore moral or immoral, I would think. But would you agree? Even God,
Well,
we don't need God for
yeah,
that.
I had the discussion with this with an atheist, right?
Mm.
And he told me that it really depends on on how you define morality. Because
How do you define it?
I might define morality this way as a theist, but you might define morality that way as an atheist. But
Mm.
and so maybe we could talk about how we define morality, so we could sort of ground it on that.
Yeah, how do you define it?
Morality is some a moral claim. So what is good, what is evil, based on an objective thing, that an objective basis. So good is this, and evil is this, and God is the basis.
Wouldn't that kind of be circular in a way to say that morals are what are right and wrong, and God says what's right and wrong, therefore you need God for morality? I mean, that's not really explaining anything. That's just solidifying your belief in God and attaching it
Mhm.
to right and wrong.
What do you mean by explaining anything though? Like,
It's not explanatory in the sense of I would think of morals as that which we should or shouldn't do. And then you say, well, what is a should? The should is based on objective truths that we know. So like my example with orange juice and battery acid, another one might be if I tell you I this morning I got up and I intentionally hurt my son and he cried. You'd say, that sounds like a dick move, Rob. Not cool. I said, yeah, well, I took him to the dentist. So yeah, I did intentionally put him through some kind of suffering, but it was for the greater good. In some kind of consequentialist way, I actually did the right thing because I helped him avoid further suffering in the future for the cost of temporary suffering in the present. That would be an example of something that might seem like it's wrong, but objectively it was good. And I don't see where God fits in with what liquid is in the glass I hand you or what happens at the dentist office, but I do see morality there.
So here's the thing, though. I again, that's how you define it, but I might define something differently. But in order for us to actually, arrive at a conclusion to this discussion, I would have at least like a criteria
Mm.
at the moral system that you work on, for each of us, and maybe we could compare each other for, for one another. So, if I were to critique your moral system, right? I would say that you have actions in your in your moral system, which would be, I think, would either be these three: the maximal well-being, minimal suffering. Maybe your third would be something of like a for a good, an undefined good, but that you yourself
Yeah,
know intuitionally.
that's
But
fair.
I don't. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you though, like, how do you know that these actions are actual action, right? How do you, and the second question is, what kind, that you say they are truths, right? That this good is something of a moral truth, for example, my son going to dentist is for the greater good. What kind of truth is that though? Is it like an empirical truth? Is it metaphysical truth? Like, how would you define that truth?
Yeah, I would say that it's pretty easy to identify that one thing. I think this was your second part of your setup. There was one of them would definitely lead to less suffering for my son, and I think that would be a justifiable reason to make that decision. You could argue then, well, if you want to have the ultimate least amount of suffering, you could just shoot him in the head. He probably won't even feel it, right? But he'd never have suffering again. But in the same utilitarian sense, I don't want to live in a society where we shoot people, and I don't want to prevent him from the pleasures that he might experience in his life. So it's not simply about eliminating suffering in that sense. Some kind of Lex Luthor-like evil DC villain scenario would probably be the best thing. Just kill everybody, eliminate suffering. But it's a little more complicated than that. Whereas I think with your solution, it oversimplifies it. Your perspective oversimplifies it in the sense of whatever God says is good is good. And I think it's that kind of thinking that has held us back from making progress in ethics.
So maybe we could talk about each moral system. I have all the time in the world, man. But maybe we could talk about that. But can you at least can we first, I guess, dive into your moral system real quick? You say it's really complicated. I would like to sort of understand where you come from first.
Yeah, I feel like I've already explained it fairly well.
Yeah,
If
but
you wanted more
you did
detail,
not answer both my questions though, right? Like, so my first question was, so if it was less suffering, but you sort of also denied it as less suffering because you were, if it was actually your action was actually less suffering, then you would just shoot your son. But no, right? You would go for something like a maximal well-being for in a define well defined by
right,
the society, the kind of society that you want.
which was
So it's
the
not
first
really
one.
less
Yeah.
suffering. So which one is it though for the first question? And
What
then second, so what kind of truth is this that you're talking about? Because if you're saying like it's the greater good for my son because it will give him less pain in his brain, then is it like a biological truth, right? Because it will in fact give him less less pain in the future because have healthier teeth and have less cavities.
So your original question was offering me three possibilities. I think I represented two of those with that analogy.
Okay.
When you say, would you agree with these three things? I thought I'd say, yeah, those are pretty fair. And then you say, well, which one? Well, I don't say that it's necessarily one thing. I don't think ethics can be that myopic. But then if you're asking what is it based on, like what kind of truth, I think at least in this analogy, in this example, that would be an empirical truth. I think that's fair. We're basing it on facts, on observation and experience of what my son would likely be feeling, because I can imagine how I would feel. But once again, it's not simply limited to that. It also incorporates a lot of our evolutionary development. The fact that when he winces in pain, when that needle goes into his jaw to ultimately eliminate pain, but when he winces, I wince based on mirror neurons in my brain, right? So there are factors that help me understand an objective sense of morality that are just simply physical. In that sense, a philosophical materialistic perspective might be helpful.
So yeah, I would like to clarify then like two things about each one for each question. So one, you said no, it's not that simple. It's a very complicated thing. So it's sometimes neither, sometimes all, sometimes some of those actions, right? Like it's not really a system then, is it? Or if you're not, and if it's not really an axiom, is if you're just gonna pick and choose which one you feel specifically is right for the specific moral situation or dilemma that you're in. The question is, do you have an actual like grounding for what you would define as or for how you define things as moral or immoral? And for the second one, okay, you correct. Okay, I would agree with you that from your worldview, you use empiricism and empirical evidence to prove that this thing is good and this thing is bad. Also, affected by evolution. So, in that sense, though, if we dive into a sort of reductionism on that, it boils down. I would say, would you say that that good or suffering is or evil is simply just a mental state? You know, it's the form of like the consciousness in the brain. It's not even the pain receptors or the nerve cells or anything that the nerve feels, but it's just sort of the specific consciousness structure.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you say that?
Answering in reverse, yes, I would say suffering is a conscious state, but I feel like consciousness is a result of the physical world. I don't find a soul there.
Yeah, but I wasn't going there really.
Okay.
But yeah, okay.
But it's a result of physical processes that occur in the same way that I don't think the music and the CD are the same thing, right? But the music is a result of the CD. The only way that you're going to be able to understand why the music is playing is if you understand how the CD works and the CD player. I do believe the music is a result of actual physical reality, but I don't think that it is the same thing, of course, as the actual physical reality. And your first one, you keep asking like first and then second, but the first one, no, I don't have a grounding in my morals in that way. I kind of learn as I go. If we're talking about my subjective experience with ethics, that doesn't mean that I think it's all relative by any means, but I feel like that question itself is kind of it's weird, Elmo, because
Why?
well, I think that's a question that derives from your perspective, your religious
But I'm just asking
way of
you,
seeing
what,
the world.
do you have a grounding?
But for you, grounding is normal. It's natural because you say, "Oh, it's all grounded in God," right? But I don't think we actually have
I think I would
groundings.
put it more into just, like, how is a word, how do you define a word? You'd say, oh, that thing is beautiful. Okay, so what do you have a grounding for what beauty is? Oh yeah, this is, my rating from 1 to 10. No,
No, you
how
would use a
fast are you
definition.
going?
You would use a
Speed.
definition. You wouldn't ask, "Do you have a grounding in what beautiful is?" We would both go off of our understanding of how
Yeah.
we define
Maybe how about like
beautiful.
speed or weight or strength? Do
Right.
you have at least a certain metric there that you use
How do you
in
measure
order
it?
to?
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Do I have a way of measuring morality?
Yeah, I guess that's
I definitely can, in a relativistic way, see that one thing might not be really bad because it's a white lie, and another one might be really, really bad because you're deceiving someone in an effort to take their property, let's say. If my wife asks, "Does this dress make me look fat?" The dress might make her look fat, but I'm probably not going to tell her the truth, right? I can compare different things and find some kind of relative metric, but if you apply these kinds of questions to other topics, let's say health, if you say, "Do you have a grounding in health?" Like, what do you mean? I'm just trying to
But
ask
is
a
it
doctor
moral
that
then,
question.
though? Is it? Well, it's sure it's about health, but does it become? Is it still moral when it comes to health?
Well, I don't want to switch that route. Yeah, we certainly can explore that. But my point is, whenever you're saying, "Do you have a grounding in morality?" Well, do you have a grounding in healthcare? Like if you ask someone that, they'd be like, "What do you mean? We're just trying to do what's best, trying to keep everybody healthy, what have you. Maybe this medicine works better than that one. We learn as we go. Back in the day, we'd stick leeches on your skin. Today, we understand that's not the best method."
But I think though, when you ask me like, do I have a grounding for healthcare? I would say yes. I have at least like a currently, a tentative grounding for what I would deem as a really good healthcare and really bad healthcare.
Right, because
At
we've
least,
we've achieved that over time, but it's changed. That we don't cut your leg
yeah,
off
sure,
if you
it
get
can
shot in your
change,
leg
but at least
anymore.
there is at least like a certain metric I have for healthcare, currently.
Relatively to one
Yeah.
to each other, and that would be my same stance with morality.
Okay.
Whereas with your perspective, you're saying it's grounded in God, and I'm saying that's not even like a real metric. Like that's not even how we actually deal with things that are not within your religious venue. But since the topic of morality is so important to your faith, you then have certain like these particular requirements, like what is it grounded in? Where does it come from? How is it objective? That we wouldn't apply to other topics.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we could talk about that. But after this one last question, man.
Sure.
But okay. Okay. Sure. Understand that your moral system is very relative on how you would see the situation, right? So, and in this sense, then if you yourself are the main arbiter for what you would deem moral, then when we talk about you, like, who are you? You probably don't believe in free will too, right?
Not in the way that we use it colloquially, no.
But so okay, you're a determinist. So in
Yeah.
as a determinist, then I'd say that you're just a product, or I guess like we are all just a product of natural phenomenon, and we're not actually agents of anything, right? So in this sense, then what anything that is moral is that, or anything that actually happens or occurs, there is actually no accountability anywhere that's happening, because if I kill someone, it's probably because of the Big Bang and how all those rocks and all those gases formed,
Oh,
and
sure,
it
sure.
eventually led me to being this.
Well, to correct how you preface that, if the way you're describing it is exactly what determinism was, then
Yeah.
then I would absolutely concede and say you nailed it spot on. But I don't think. How do I rephrase it? What you're calling determinism, within the sense of the free will argument, it would probably be better defined as fatalism. If some rock was flying through space and hit other rocks, and then that sort of deform into the Earth, right? And it's spinning into this giant globe that we have today, and then somehow abiogenesis occurs, and one thing just keeps leading to the next thing, and everything's inevitable. That may very well be how reality is. I don't know that I could make an argument to prove that's how it would occur. I would probably need to have a degree in physics or quantum physics or one of the physicses. Physices? How do you say that? What's
I would
plural
say,
with
though,
physics? A
it
gaggle
could
of
be,
physics? I don't know.
fatalistic determinism.
Yeah. A determinist isn't necessarily fatalistic. A determinist is just simply saying my will isn't free. I still have will, but what's the cause for it? And I mean, it's fairly. It's not even that complicated if you think about it. Like I see a
Question,
chocolate
though.
cake and I want a chocolate cake.
Question though, do you think that when you say you could have a will but it's not free, how do you define will?
That's a very good question. I would think that which I desire to do would probably be the closest way to describe will.
Okay, so let's say that you're fully determined and you're just a result of all the natural causes and everything.
Well,
So,
once
but
again,
you're
that's
you, right?
fatalism.
And you desire cake, right? So you will to have cake, but you were always meant to desire cake. Is that what you're saying?
That would be fatalism, and that's not something I can necessarily defend. That is something I'm thoroughly interested in, whether that's how reality really works. And it does seem to lean that way, but I couldn't argue in that sense. But I do feel comfortable arguing in the sense of, if I can kind of repeat what you said back to you in my own way, I see the cake and I want the cake. I will to eat the cake, right? But I didn't create my body that really wants to carb up as much as it can, that likes sweets because that's typically a high carbohydrate, that also has been raised in a culture where cake is something that we treat ourselves with. In that moment, my will is not contingent upon anything other than the fact that I'm hungry also. I might have skipped lunch that day because there was a meeting and I didn't have time, and then I see a cake on the break room table. So all these other factors are occurring. I might not even made the cake. I didn't know how the cake got there. Somebody else put it there. If they hadn't put it there, I wouldn't want cake right now. I wouldn't even think about cake. So in that sense, my will exists for sure. We can agree about that. But how free is that? That doesn't sound very free to me.
It's not free, I guess, within your worldview, right?
Right, of course. But why would you say it's free?
Well, I guess like there are a lot of arguments when it comes to free will, right? Like for example, agency, I guess, and I would also say intentionality. I think so. For example, in intentionality, when we humans, for example, decide to have a certain order in things, you could see that we actually intended to do it, and it's not just something that's accidental. So I would say that at least gives us some proof that we are in fact thinking agents. We determine for ourselves. Well, I guess it's because I my worldview is based on a world of that's intelligently designed. So I don't really find a problem with a consciousness arising from a certain biological structure that is able to have these moral agents, these agencies and free will.
How did you determine God is good? If you're saying He
Yeah.
is the source of all good, how do you know that source is good?
Awesome. Well, that's an awesome question. I just recently posted that question on
Oh, great.
my news feed. Uh, I there's like 150 comments right that over there right now about it. But if you ask me, with all these opinions from everyone, I would say that God is necessarily good because if there was in fact a moral system out there, then it would probably be determined by the ultimate being out there, right? The question though is like, will God be good just from a standard outside of God, or will God be only good within His own standard?
Can I interrupt
Well,
before you continue? And it's not for the purpose of stopping you. It's just for the purpose of clarifying. You're kind of setting a syllogism here, right? And so your first premise is, if there is objective morality, then there must be, I'm paraphrasing, so feel free to interrupt me and correct me if you need to, some kind of objective lawgiver if there's a law, right? I don't understand that. Even before you get to the next step, I think I don't see why there couldn't be an objective truth about what you did was best or not for mutual benefit of humanity or human flourishing or limiting suffering of conscious beings. That would still be true, in my opinion, whether someone created it or not. We don't even have to go into God made it or not. We could simply say it is a fact based on empirical evidence that if I stab you in the eye, I don't know why that came to mind. I don't want to stab you, but I'm just saying, I stab you in the eye, that's not good for you. And a society that would allow me to stab you in the eye without consequence or anything trying to deter me from doing so isn't good for everyone. That seems to exist whether God wrote it in the Bible to stab you in the eye or not. And I don't. My point is, I don't understand why we need God for that. That's just a fact.
So the question I guess that I would ask you as well is like, why do you think that that your understanding or your intuitional understanding of what is good or what is best, what is evil, is actually that?
Based on evidence.
Where are you basing that off?
Evidence.
What
But we
kind
can
of
see that you living your life with one eye as opposed to two isn't as desirable as the latter. We could
But
say,
I'm looking for evidence with actual justification. For if I guess I have an understanding of your moral system, and from what I found is this. Like I guess I would make three conclusions from from your own moral system. One is that you are the one determining for yourself based on your own subjectivity what is good and what is evil or what is wrong or what is best, right? And so and you determine those by multiple axioms that where it depends on you which one you use at a certain situation. So it's not really in any single metric that you use. And second is that you assume that there's a you, and then you assume that there's an actual good or bad, because and that assumption though is based on your biology, which of
To some
course a
degree.
product of evolution from your worldview.
To some
So if
degree,
it's
yeah.
just a product of evolution, right? So then it could have
Not
been that
just.
we evolved to actually enjoy suffering and loathe, well, loathe dopamine and well-being and comfort, and then it would be the opposite, right? And
Yes,
it
yes, it would. That's that. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, yes, it would, and we could be wrong about whether that was objectively for our benefit or not. Absolutely, it is natural to rape. That is totally natural within our evolutionary process to rape one another. Doesn't mean that it's moral. So we've had to make adjustments as we've learned more information, as we've gathered more facts about civil rights and bodily autonomy. So yes, I love where you went with that. Absolutely, that I might have some intuition, but more data allows me to make better decisions. So that's the benefit of guilt, right?
Yeah.
As soon as
So
I do
question
something
though,
wrong, I feel bad. The other day, I was telling my son, my son's like, he's in every analogy here, but I was telling him, feed the dogs, and he didn't want to feed the dogs. I'm like, you better get your butt up and feed those dogs right now, because he was on his phone, he's playing on it, right? And he gets up, and as he's walking, I put my hand to his back because he's walking real slow and we're in a hurry. I'm wanting to like hurry him forward. So I'm physically pushing him a little bit forward, but right at the end of that push, which I don't think was necessarily wrong, I'm like, hey, let's go. But right at the end of it, I give a little extra shove, right? Just a little bit. And his feet kind of stumble a little, and I feel bad because I went, oh, that was acting in anger. That was a little far. I didn't even have to do that. But just in that moment, I really wanted to let him know you got to do your responsibilities. You got to do your chores. You got to do what's right. We got to get to school, And but in that moment, that little extra shove wasn't necessary. He didn't fall. He didn't, nothing really happened of it. But I still later, after I got home, somebody else picked him up from school. But after I got home, I still later said, hey, I went a little far with that, and you need to know that was the wrong thing to do, right? I'm sorry, and I think that was moral. To apologize. And yes, that is subjective. Maybe if I was raised in a house that had a lot of violence, I wouldn't even know that was wrong. But once again, that's based on the information that we receive. Just like rape might be a natural process in evolution, but we get more data and we adjust and we get closer to that which would be objectively moral as we go.
So, question though, bro, because you're sort of saying that there is an actual objective morality out there
Yeah, I think so.
from your own worldview.
Yeah, but I don't know that it's necessary. And I'm using the word necessary particularly. I don't know that it's necessarily created.
So you believe that there might be an objective morality out there, but it doesn't necessarily need to have a moral giver.
Correct.
Right? Wow, I've never. Okay, I guess that's very Jumpy. Okay.
I'm not
All right.
proposing a T-jump argument as far as I know.
Oh yeah, you're not. Okay.
Or not trying to.
got-
It's not totally uncommon within atheists to actually have. I would say it's probably 70-30 objective and subjective. I think there's more objective moral atheists.
So
than
do
the
you
latter.
think that if we were to, if you were to be omniscient, right, and knowing all the data, that you would also then like be able to claim that for certain, like 100%, what is objectively moral and what isn't, right? Because you have all the data.
Yes.
So what is the nature of this objective morality? Because from what I've asked you earlier, like you had an axiom, like multiple axioms, which depended on relatively from for you. So what would this objective morality be? Is it like a?
It's simply just truth. It's synonymous with truth. You could apply that truth in different ways. So we could say, is 2 an even number?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is a truth that it's even, but we're also using the term even, which is a truth of language, right? So in that same way, you could say, is there a best way to govern a populace of people given their current cultural scenario? There is. I don't know what it is. I have some ideas on it, and we describe that as politics, right? But it's still, there is a best way. Of course there's a otherwise, what are we doing? What are we trying to achieve?
It could be nothing, right? Like we could be trying to achieve this, but it wouldn't really matter in any way, you know, because if from your perspective, right, like if there is such a thing as an objective morality, what would be the nature of the objective morality? Like
What do you mean
for
nature?
whose good would it be tending to?
Going into the topic of morality, I would assume we're talking about that which is best for us. So
For human.
well, yeah, I mean, but let's not discount little bunny rabbits and kittens. They can experience suffering as well.
How about bacteria or plants or other living things?
To what extent can they experience suffering as far as we know?
But question
Pretty
though,
sure they
like,
can.
why does suffering matter to objective morality? Because you know, if
Well, then
suffering is
what
simply
else are we
just a
talking
mental.
about? If all we're talking about is God said it, I believe it, that settles it, that's not morality. That's not what philosophers have been doing for hundreds of years. If that was all it was, we could just open up the Bible, read something, and close it, and we got all the answers. Hopefully your interpretation is accurate. I can tell you a lot of other Christians are going to disagree with you. And also, that's just within your own faith. What about all the other religions that have a different holy book? That's no way for us to make decisions. That's not what Kant was trying to do with the categorical imperative, right? That's not what Aristotle was trying to do with virtue ethics. If we simply limit it to, I get my answers from this guy because this guy's got the answers, man, we've come way too far to deal with that kind of Bronze Age backward thinking.
Well, okay. Well, I would just say two things, right? I do agree with you that, you know, morality is a huge topic in discussion, you know, history, especially in philosophy. But second, okay, there might be, if I guess if, you know, if you're going to you know, selectively choose the specific, you know, denomination of people that, you know, that just says that, oh, God says this, then, you know, this is the ultimate and specific system that we should follow as society, then I that's a very small percentage of people, I'd say. You know, there are many theists that also dive into the philosophy, and especially when it comes to morality, and they, I think a lot of them have, I guess, more intricacies, more complications, and more logical foundations for their moral beliefs and moral claims.
Okay. But isn't that what you think? Would you not describe yourself as a divine command theorist? Would you not say that if God says it, it is moral?
Well, yeah, but you know, I would love. I guess you could ask me more about that, but maybe you did sort of presuppose. I guess I don't blame you for like you know, presupposing me as a divine command theorist and having all the entailments, your assumed entailments for it. But no, I guess I myself, you know, I do believe that in divine command. But for me, there's a lot of philosophical details to it that, you know, I think about for myself too.
Okay. We're circling right back almost before we wrap up to the beginning, which almost seems like you had this all planned. You know what you're doing. But regardless, it's coming back to the Euthyphro Dilemma, right? So you're saying that you see God as having a nature of that which is good. Would that be fair? Not necessarily he says it, therefore it's good. He says it because that's his nature to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So where would that nature come from? Is that nature from without or from within God? Like, did he choose his nature?
I'd say God is goodness. Our God is good. So, you know, he is the ultimate being, right? And I would even say that and use the Thomist definition that he is like he is being in you know, in actuality or everything that is being. So in this case, yeah, God is in fact everything that is good or is good.
So what is he appealing to whenever he makes a commandment?
So I guess like he's definitely appealing to himself.
So is he deciding to appeal to that particular commandment, or is it inevitable? Does he not have free will to choose differently?
Okay, so the question of does God have free will?
Well, free
I'd
will
say
of choosing his nature in particular.
I'd say because he is defined as yes, I think he does.
So then he has decided what is good and bad if he chose his nature. And therefore, while
Yeah, I think
you were criticizing me of having subjective morality, we find out in the end, after a very fruitful and awesome discussion, I'm grateful for it, but we find out in the end, you actually are the one that believes in subjective morality because God chooses his nature, and that's a choice subjective to him.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, right? Okay, if both of us, let's say, have this at least have some level of subjectivity, I guess it is in fact, by definition subjective to God. But who is God, right? He is the ultimate being. He is the the one who is perfect and everything good. So at least from my worldview, it does make sense for me to use, I guess, to base my morality on God. But judging from your moral system, man, I guess, like, in terms of consistency, I found that there are many things that you would probably change in the future as well as you go on and learn more and receive more data, right? So in this sense, though, that your moral system is relative, and if it will change in the future, then what you claim to be good today might actually change and become something wrong if you gain more data, tomorrow or even the next hour. So I guess, like, if we're going to use which moral system is best for society, then I think that's more of like a sociological question rather than a question based on what is in fact true, or what is true.
That's fair.
Right? Because if it, yeah.
Do you understand why I would say that after all this, it appears to me, at least from my perspective, that your morality is subjective if God gets to choose his nature? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think it does too. I respect that, and there are many, I guess, arguments against, like the Euthyphro Dilemma and all the others. I'm not a philosopher with any PhD to rebut any actual argument.
But you
about
do
that.
know your stuff. Like at every question, you were like, "Oh, sure, that's this thing or that thing." So you clearly know your stuff, and I appreciate you coming on today. Anybody that wants to check out Elmo's World can do so on Spotify, or check out our link in our show notes. This was a great conversation, man. I really appreciate talking to you. I appreciate you giving up your time today.
All right, man. Thank you so much. And yo, to the audience, listen to Elmo's World podcast. I give everybody hard time, and I
You do.
I'm not afraid to get a hard time, as well. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Robert.
you don't let up on that one. I've heard that. Anyway, thanks, man.
All right, bye everyone.
Thank you to Elmo, cool guy. Thank you to Dave Blair at DaveBlairMusic.com. Thank you to Feedspot.com for promoting the Right to Reason to the Top 10 Atheist podcast. Thank you to our patrons: Jason Parker, Freethinker 215, Alan Marks, Philip Spawn, Bernard Lamberell, Enema Man, Larry Wilson, and our top supporter, Rob Montgomery. You can support this broadcast at patreon.com/right and learn more at therighttoreason.com. This episode is a taste of what is to come between myself and Eric Hernandez. That will be a live debate on the gospel truth. It'll occur on March 27th. Same topic: is God necessary for morality? Don't miss it, and help me out with some live comments and questions next week. We're leaving religion and getting back into politics. We have a debate between a pissed off liberal and a hard right conservative. Between now and then, and between now and the 27th, remember that you have the right to reason.
And you'll be one of God's children that fell from the top. There's no diversity because we're burning in the melting pot. So when the devil wants to dance with you, you better say never, because a dance with the devil might last you forever.